Postcards from America is an attempt by Magnum and Magnum photographers to do a couple of things. One of them is to explore collaborations between photographers on an ongoing project. The other is to find ways to fund and sell work ourselves. Postcards from America is a way for us to get away from getting assignments from the New York Times, from Perry Match, from Der Stern, and get into producing projects ourselves, conceiving them, making them happen, and then selling the work afterwards. The first Postcards from America project took place in 2011. There were 5 photographers involved: Jim Goldberg, Paolo Pellegrin, Susan Meiselas, Mikhail Sabutsky, and Alex Soth. They basically got into a van in Texas and they drove to California, and they just improvised along the way, shot lots of photos. There was a show in San Francisco, I believe, when they arrived, and they documented what they were doing as they were doing it on a website. That website still remains up. Those 5 photographers are really the nucleus of the Postcards from America projects. There have been 2 subsequent Postcards from America projects. 10 Magnum photographers gathered in Rochester, New York. Rochester was chosen for a couple of reasons. One is that it's an interesting city in America. It's a small city. It's not a famous city. There used to be a lot of manufacturing there, part of what we call in America the Rust Belt. There used to be towns where steel was produced, but in the 1970s, a great deal of that manufacturing went offshore, went overseas. So it went from being the steel belt to the Rust Belt. But Rochester is a city that's been able to reinvent itself in many ways. There's a lot of technology there. Additionally, and more importantly, Rochester was the home of Eastman Kodak, which obviously, produced the film that all Magnum photographers, indeed all photographers all over the world, grew up shooting. Eastman Kodak went into bankruptcy recently, and they stopped producing film as well. For those reasons, we thought it was an interesting place to explore kind of collaborative storytelling. Just the kind of the legend of Rochester, like its centrality to photography, and what it said about America right now. We found that interesting.
I think if you're curious, you have to create work, you have to find space and create innovative ways to, let's say, share that work, make that work visible, make it coherent. So to move from a magazine where somebody else makes choices to a book where you make your own, to an exhibition or a film or a website, I mean, these are all explorations of what can we do to communicate whatever we think we might know about something that we can share.
Susan Meiselas is one of the few Magnum photographers that's been involved in every one of the Postcards project. And she's done really interesting stuff in both Rochester and Florida, which are the most recent ones. In Rochester, she got very engaged in documenting a shirt factory. Sort of the very traditional manufacturing process in America. We're used to very sad stories about factories and factory towns such as Detroit, Michigan in America. And yet there's something of a small rebirth of manufacturing going on. So she's been an excellent documentarian of that. In Florida, she was doing quite a bit of work on election night. Florida is obviously a very important state in the peculiar way that America conducts its elections. And it was expected to be one of the deciding states. So Florida, aside from being a very strange and colorful state, has had a very interesting history in the elections. And Susan did a great deal of work just seeing, what is the texture, what is the particular visuals of, the rooms that a campaign is conducted in on election night, where the voting takes place, but also the offices where all of the campaign workers are, where they work. What is the feeling you get out of it? And through her work, she did what was done in real time. You definitely got a feeling that Obama was going to win and Romney was going to lose, and that's actually, in fact, what happened.
I would just say we all have perspectives on truth. I'm not sure there is a truth. There are perspectives on truth. What I might know now, I might rethink 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 or 20 years later. So is it my truth today? Yes, I might believe something today, but I might rethink it. I think it's really hard to be idealistic now. I'm more skeptical. I'm more, thoughtful about how complex change is. I've seen tremendous disappointment and great aspirations. So I don't think, I don't wish for more. I just am more reflective about how complex the world is to transform deeply.
Η εργασία της Susan στο Κουρδιστάν ξεκίνησε στις αρχές της δεκαετίας του 90 υπό το βάρος καταγγελιών στη διεθνή κοινή γνώμη ότι χιλιάδες χωριά κουρδικά στο Ιρακινό Κουρδιστάν είχαν καεί από τις Ιρακινές δυνάμεις τις στρατιωτικές. Στο πλαίσιο αυτό η Susan ξεκίνησε μία έρευνα στην πορεία της οποίας διαπίστωσε ότι ο κουρδικός λαός, παρότι αριθμεί περίπου 20 εκατομμύρια, είναι δηλαδή ποσοτικά μεγαλύτερος από αρκετές ευρωπαϊκές χώρες, είναι σπαρμένο σε 4-5 διαφορετικές χώρες της περιοχής και ως εκ τούτου ουδέποτε είχε δικό του ανεξάρτητο κράτος, ουδέποτε είχε εθνικό αρχείο ή κάποια δική του έντυπη ιστορία.
First of all, I didn't think I was doing it for them. I thought I was working with them. I went first as a photographer at the moment of crisis when the Kurds were fleeing after the insurrection with Saddam. And so it was a very specific moment of time. What I discovered was a deeper history that I, among many others, knew very little about. So what propelled me was my own curiosity to find out more. It led to a 6+ year project collecting various perspectives on Kurdish history that came mostly from outsiders because they're the ones who had the cameras. So essentially, in some ways, I was following the leads that the Kurds gave me as to where things might be buried. If you even think about here we are 20 years later, you wouldn't go anywhere. You'd just go online and you'd start Googling Kurds and you'd find pictures in various archives. You wouldn't sit in people's backyards. They would be uploading the pictures to your website. So everything has changed. But in 91, when I began that project, one didn't know where a picture of a Kurd would be buried in an archive or in a private collection or with a family album, etc.
Η υπόθεση του Κουρδιστάν, η οποία απασχόλησε την Susan και τους συνεργάτες της για μία σχεδόν 20ετία, θεωρώ ότι είναι ένα μοναδικό στο είδος του εγχείρημα στην ιστορία της φωτογραφίας. Η φωτογραφία ως τώρα αντιμετωπίζονταν ως τεκμήριο σε ένα ευρύτερο ιστορικό πλαίσιο, ενώ τώρα ξαφνικά έρχεται στο προσκήνιο σαν ένας ενεργός τελεστής της ιστορίας.
Many photographers only want their pictures to tell the stories. I am interested in the voices around and inside and embedded inside those photographs to be unleashed. And you know, I've done a lot of work with photographs and sound for that reason. So I guess that's how I see it. You know, I think it's more, you know, a kind of vision of what the whole process means. To document a moment, to reflect on it over time, to have a relationship, which is what I think a photograph really is. It's about a relationship.
Αποφάσισε να κάνει μια εντελώς πρωτότυπη δουλειά. Επισκέφθηκε πολλές από αυτές τις χώρες, τη Συρία, το Ιράκ, το Ιράν, τη Ρωσία, χώρες στις οποίες ζούσαν κουρδικοί πληθυσμοί και αναζήτησε ιστορικό, αρχαιακό υλικό το οποίο μπορούσε να βρει από αναμνηστικές φωτογραφίες, από φωτογραφίες στρατιωτικών αποστολών, διπλωματών, ιεραποστόλων, άλλο υλικό αρχαιακό, το οποίο είχε σε κάθε περίπτωση άλλες χρήσεις πριν έρθει στα δικά της χέρια και το συνάρμοσε όλο αυτό σε ένα βιβλίο το οποίο ονομάστηκε «Κουρδιστάν στη σκιά της ιστορίας», συνέχεια του οποίου υπήρξε μια ιστοσελίδα με τον ίδιο τίτλο, στην οποία ασφαλώς υπήρχε πολύ περισσότερο υλικό, αλλά υπήρχε και μια μοναδική δυνατότητα αλληλεπίδρασης του κοινού, το οποίο μπορούσε είτε να προσφέρει πληροφορίες για εικόνες που υπήρχαν, είτε να προσφέρει εικόνες οι οποίες ήταν άγνωστες μέχρι τότε και μπορούσαν να ενταχθούν στο υλικό αυτό.
And so I was interested in photography. I was interested in people participating in contributing to a collective history and creating as open a opportunity as that. And it started with collecting for the book. It then led to a website where, you know, for a number of years, the exhibition led people to bring work to upload before we had smartphones that did them. There are many threads that came together along with a technology that made it possible to do something I couldn't possibly have imagined even 7 years before when I began. So in '98, when we launched AKA Kurdistan as a website, you couldn't, it had to be managed, you know, completely different than an environment today, 10 years plus later.
Η ιστοσελίδα αυτή, η οποία είναι ακόμη σε λειτουργία, είναι ένα ιδιαίτερα ενδιαφέρον εγχείρημα σε ό,τι αφορά τη θεώρηση της ιστορίας. Στο μεγάλο πλαίσιο αυτού του εγχειρήματος υπάρχουν και σύγχρονες φωτογραφίες, τις οποίες έχει η ίδια τραβήξει από χώρους μαζικής εκτέλεσης Κούρδων, από ανθρώπους οι οποίοι εισφέρουν προφωνικές μαρτυρίες, οι οποίες εντάσσονται και εμπλέκονται με το υπόλοιπο ιστορικό υλικό, το οποίο προέρχεται από πάρα πολλές πηγές, από το 19ο αιώνα ακόμη. Είναι το είδος, θα λέγαμε, του βιβλίου που για πρώτη φορά ίσως ένας Κούρδος πατέρας ή μια μητέρα θα μπορούσε να δώσει στο παιδί του και να του πει πάρε ένα κομμάτι από την ιστορία του λαού σου.
I think photography is still quite important. I think people remember or still photograph much more than a moving image. It's a frozen moment that somehow it burns into the brain and the soul. You know, the history of photography is filled with images that are just that one moment that people will remember forever.
I was very, very dedicated to doing the best documentation of the worst violence that I could ever imagine. That was my purpose. I don't think I was fearless. I think I confronted my fear by pushing through it in a way. But I also was sensitive to when I felt fear and felt there was a time to retreat. I mean, being fearless is really just, is not so much about danger. It's more about going beyond what's expected, you know? Following your own instincts about things, whether or not it's au courant or interesting to anyone else. The unknowing, the doubt, living with that, that's being fearless. I don't think it's my mission to put myself into danger. I think I accept that danger is part of what I might have to go through in order to do what I believe in doing. Somewhat different.